Growing up in Alston in rent-control housing, it was tough, but as a kid, you don't really understand what tough is. I had a roof over my head, I had clothes to wear, and I had food to eat.
I grew up on the south side of Chicago, most of that time on welfare. I lived with my grandparents and my mother and sister and various relatives who came and went from time to time in our grandparents' two-bedroom tenement.
My father worked in a textile manufacturing plant. He immigrated to the United States from Lebanon when he was 13. You know, he was like the night superintendent, which is like the second highest job at the factory, but all he did was take college kids, train them, and 3 years later they'd come back and they'd be his boss. So the point being, his boys were gonna go to college.
When we came to this country, he used to take us driving. My sister and I, we would sit in the back of the car and we would have to read all the different signs so that we can begin to speak English.
When I told my grandmother when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old and really just learning to write in cursive that I wanted to be a secretary, she said, "You'd make a pretty good secretary. Why wouldn't you want to be the boss?" And that was a terrifying idea, but it stayed.
My father's impression, his being so taken by education, would come from observing the world around him. He knew from his growing up that it was going to be difficult enough if you were a person of color. And without an education, the difficulties only multiplied.
I found out through a 7th grade English teacher about a program called A Better Chance. And one thing led to another, and I was ultimately introduced to Milton Academy, where I came in that fall. No one in our family had ever gone to college, but nobody told me I couldn't. And I now realize what a gift that was.
Having the degree was what it was all about. It was the ticket to the ball game.
I told my parents I made it to this school, I'm going to BC. She was happy, thrilled. But I didn't want to tell her how much it cost, because I didn't know how I was going to deal with it. I didn't know what was going to happen, if I could accept it or not.
We never worried about paying for it because it was such a big deal to get into school. So in many ways, my family went into this process completely ignorant about the fact of paying for it.
It was a completely overwhelming process that I spent a lot of time at my dining room table with my parents' tax forms, filling out the FAFSA.
I paid the payment to get in, but I got to keep the payments up. I took care of the first semester. Well, the next semester is coming in the next couple of months, and then semester after that and after that.
That's where uAspire fills a very important role, in my view at least, in helping today's students accomplish their objectives.
The lack of knowledge around addressing the financial issues in families and those students are a huge, huge barrier.
A parent's ability to fill out these very complicated forms shouldn't be the high-stakes moment that precludes a young person from attending college.
What uAspire does is to unpack and detangle that component of the college experience. And that alone can save a student from, not completing a 4-year degree or not completing college.
uAspire serves the kind of role for kids like me that big apparatus there at Milton Academy served when I was there. Familiarizing students and their families with what some of the opportunities are, where the resources are. And I think also an intangible thing, which is to say yes, you can. That there's a way to make this work, and it's worth it.
When I went across the stage, parents were both still alive. It was a good moment. It was a great moment. Yeah, it was important.
I sat down by myself. Just sat down by myself on the stoop, cap and gown, middle of the neighborhood. I got funny looks in my neighborhood at my parents' place because I had a cap and gown. What are you doing in a cap and gown? People were walking by thinking I stole it from somebody. That was natural reaction, but it was mine. I earned this, not for 4 years, for 21 years.
To have accomplished that goal and to see what it meant to my parents was well worth any effort that was expended on that trail to getting there.
There was a huge rainstorm and we didn't care. right? We did not care. Families up there. I'm at my pew and all the garb, and it was the most exhilarating moment.
I remember that my grandmother's enthusiasm was not about the prestige, it was about the opportunity. And that's, I think, been a lasting lesson for me.
Having a diploma or a degree, what it does is put you on the playing field so that you can compete in an environment that you couldn't compete in without that degree.
It's the credential that opens the door. If it were just a piece of paper, then it wouldn't open the door. It'll open the door.
Anybody in life doing anything for the first time, the first person that runs through the wall will always bleed. But everybody else afterwards has a path. And I think that's important to understand. Somebody has to try to run through that wall.
It is no longer acceptable for you to believe that college is not in your path. It absolutely is. And you have an opportunity to get the help that you need. Go find the uAspire office, and you will see that your life will change once you have a college degree. I am an example of that.